Yozora is a very mysterious character who was introduced in Kingdom Hearts 3. His first appearance seemed like nothing more than a gag reference made by series director Tetsuya Nomura due to the aesthetic similarities the character and his setting had to his previously cancelled project, Final Fantasy Versus 13, which went on to become Final Fantasy 15 under another director. Not only that, but the similarities in design to Noctis, the main character of that game, were too convenient to only be a coincidence. When fans gained access to the secret ending that was patched in a few days later, it took everyone by surprise. Yozora was apparently a real and important character in the universe of the series moving forward. One moment in that cutscene's music specifically referenced the opening chord of Somnus, the song that represented the idea of Versus 13 the most, and that was used on many of its concept trailers. An idea that Tetsuya Nomura had talked about in the past was that Noctis and Sora were intentionally named as to mean opposite things to each other. This is extremely relevant when analyzing the music surrounding Yozora in the secret episode of the Remind DLC that came out in January 2020. The secret episode opens up with Sora in a night version of the final world, with a dark starry sky reflected on the clear ground. Here, Sora is alone, and the first thing we hear is a very somber melody sung by a single female voice. I've looked for connections this melody may share to other pieces in the series, and have not been able to find anything, but if I had to take a guess, I'd say this will be a future motif to represent the nameless star character. After almost 2 minutes of mostly ambience noise and minimalistic piano chords, we hear a very quiet piano melody. Those who paid attention to the scene could recognize that this was in fact a variation on Sora's theme, keeping the melody mostly intact, but switching the rhythm of the passage. Listen to this comparison. You may notice right away that the opening note of the melody is changed, and you may be surprised to hear that this is not a new variation on the opening of Sora's theme. Yoko Shimomura had already used the exact same notes to represent Sora in the Scala et Kylum battle theme. Remember this because it will come up later. Hear it for yourself. The rest of the cutscene before the battle has quite a lot of interesting and new material, but just like the melody at the start, I could not find existing pieces in the Kingdom Hearts series that it pulls from, and none of it seems to come up in the battle theme itself. Thus, I won't be going over it in this video. Now, we will begin talking about Yozora's battle theme. There are a few things I like to keep clear. First, I will be talking about the sections out of the order they appear, so that my points come across more clearly. Second, some of the transcriptions that I show on screen will be in different tonalities from the audio that will play, and that is because it will be easier to compare different pieces to this one if I make them all share a single key. When listening to Yozora's battle theme, one of the most prominent passages in it is what I like to call his main motif, due to it repeating and varying 3 different times during the piece. The only other section that repeats and varies this many times is what I call the modulation transition section, which doesn't seem to have any motivic relevance, instead only serving as a way to separate or connect sections. This makes Yozora's main motif the most important and visible part of the piece. Listen to it. You might be wondering, Why does this sound so familiar? It doesn't seem to share notes with anything, and that's because it doesn't. If you've watched my video on the secret motifs on Kingdom Hearts 3's soundtrack, you may remember that a big part of what made Scala at Kylo's battle theme seem so familiar is that it didn't share any melodic notes with other pieces. Instead, it shared rhythmic motifs from the melody of Dark Impetus. The very same thing is happening here, although very briefly, with Yozora referencing the rhythm in Sora's theme. This is because Sora's theme has a very recognizable use of triplets and similar 3-note patterns, and Yozora's main motif does the same. These are what I call the Yozora sections of the piece. Take a listen to this comparison. Furthermore, this very same section actually shares its melody with the middle part of Sora's theme's variation from the cutscene preceding the battle. I wonder if the idea that Sora and Yozora are opposite to each other is still present from when Nomura had that idea about Noctis and Sora. It would explain why Yozora's main motif seems to be a mirror to Sora's. If you think I'm reaching, just wait for this next part. Remember how the start of the variation on Sora's theme from the previous cutscene, as well as in Scala at Kylum, used a different note at the start? Well, this note, followed by Sora's main motif, is used yet again on another passage of Yozora's battle theme, as that section's main melody. It appears twice, having a modulated variation soon after. There's a bit more to Yozora's theme than just these two parts. In fact, near its beginning, there's also a very hidden reference to the beginning of Riku's theme, the notes played by the melody in the strings. Unlike the parts linked to Sora's theme, the section only plays once, and does not repeat until the track loops again. Pay attention to how the colored notes are distributed in the same order in both pieces. If you pay attention, you can tell that this part seems like Riku's theme was cut apart and rearranged, to the point of being almost unrecognizable. But within a closer look, it's undeniable that it's the foundation for it. The durations were altered and the 3 notes from the beginning were moved to the end. Could this have implications on why Yozora looks so much like Riku? David Russell pointed out to me on Twitter that some of these ascending notes from Riku's theme are also present on the intro section, March and Purple, which seems to be otherwise unworthy of mention when it comes to motivic significance. Shout out to David and his current KH music analysis series, The Music of Kingdom Hearts, on his side channel. I definitely recommend you guys check it out. This other section, which I call the Dismiss section, has a subtle phrasing on the bass, which I found slightly similar to another in Dismiss. I wouldn't put too much faith in this one, as it might boil down to a case of Shimomura's style being too familiar. However, seeing as Dismiss has heavy links to the Sadi, and how the final world and the Station of Awakening are closely linked, the theme of dreams being hinted at, and in the very phrase, is any of this for real or not, being recontextualized, it might be a subtle nod to the series' roots, and how we'll be seeing them going forward. This next section is what I call the Shibuya section. That is because in the alternate version of this theme that plays in data greeting, the piece starts out a bit differently. It starts with a variation on the transition section, and then leading into this melody, which I can't seem to link to anything else. Either way, it sure is pretty. It does have a couple of triplets which could indicate Sora, but in this case, I think it's mostly a choice of stylistic consistency. Lastly, another thing I'd like to point out is that I did look for connections to the Master of Masters theme and found none, to my surprise. You'd definitely think they'd have some sort of connection, but as far as this theme goes, that doesn't seem to be the case. Wow, that was quite a lot of stuff to break down. I hope this was enjoyable to watch. If you liked it, you may be interested in some of my other video analysis I've made, or my Synthesia tutorials and covers of other Kingdom Hearts music tracks. If any of that interests you, I'd love to have you aboard on the subscriber train. Every click helps me grow this channel into something a little more precious. I have some suggestions on screen for you guys. That's all for this video though, so thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.